Welcome to Signs, the podcast about signs. Each episode centers on a single sign chosen by the guest. It might be visual or auditory, an icon, symbol, index, gesture, inscription, object, whatever speaks to them. We examine how the sign functions, the contexts in which it appears, and how it's interpreted. Guests come from semiotics, linguistics, and beyond, and episodes are recorded in French or English. In 2024, my guest for this episode, Professor Ghil'ad Zuckermann, was listed in Australia's top 30 living legends of research by the newspaper The Australian. He received the Rubenlicht Prize for his outstanding contribution to Yiddish scholarship in 2023. He is the author of Revivalistics from Genesis of Israeli to Language Reclamation in Australia and Beyond, published by Oxford University Press in 2020. A brilliant polyglot whose works cover several disciplines from historical linguistics to lexicography, Ghil'ad has held numerous chairs around the world and is currently professor at Flinders University, Adelaide. You can find his full biography and links to his papers and to his socials on the episode page of sciencepodcast.com. So, welcome, Ghil'ad, to Signs. I'm so pleased to have you on this new podcast.
Thank you, Sophia. It's wonderful to join you from Adelaide, Australia. Australia Australis. That's the south of the south, because Australia itself means south. Australia in Latin is south. And I am within the capital of South Australia. And I look forward to meeting you in due course. I hope to make it to France in May.
Fantastic. Well, I look forward to that. I'm really excited to find out what sign or signs you've chosen for this episode. So if we could get straight to it.
No worries. I have to say that when you asked me to choose signs, at the beginning I thought maybe you want me to choose, for example, a letter. So I thought of the letter Omicron, which is the same letter as O in English, but originally Omicron comes from a Phoenician sign, which is Ayin, which appears in my own name, Ghil'ad. My original pronunciation was Ghil'ad, and this Ayin, this pharyngeal gulp, had kind of a circle with a little bit of extra lines at the end. And when the Greeks took the Phoenician alphabet, which is used, of course, in Hebrew, Aramaic, they did not need the pharyngeals because they don't have pharyngeals. On the other hand, they needed to have vowels. And in Semitic script, you don't need the vowels because you have kind of vocalizations, diacritics on top and at the bottom. So what the Greeks did, they took the Ayin, which was kind of rubbish from their perspective, and they made it into the O. And because your name is Sophia, I thought of getting that as a sign, as a letter. But then I said, wait, maybe she means signs as in kind of more like bigger, So I decided to pick up some road signs for you.
Thank you very much. Yes, so you've taken the literal sign of, we have here, I can see, your first sign. So for the listeners, this is available. This image is available on the website that accompanies this podcast. So you can just go there. The details are below. So yes, this is a rather large road sign.
Well,
where is it?
This is an introduction to Australia. I usually say that some countries are democracies. Others are aristocracies. Australia, modern Australia, ab initio, is a bureaucracy. In other words, modern Australia, I'm not talking about Aboriginal Australia, which has existed for 51 to 60,000 years, maybe 51 to 65,000 years ago. The Aboriginal people, they walked from Africa, and arrived in Australia. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about modern Australia, which is, say, 230 years old approximately. It was established by, as you know, convicts and the jailers, the prisoners, who are bureaucrats. And then you had the Aborigines. They were called Aborigines. Now that we call them Aboriginal people, indigenous people, and their protectors of Aborigines, they were called. And then there were some free settlers with some politicians, etc. So I would argue that Australia, modern Australia, ab initio, is a bureaucracy rather than as a democracy. And then with the Americanization of Australia, modern Australia, it has become a professionalized bureaucracy. So what does it mean? It means we need to follow orders. We need to follow regulations. We need to follow protocols. You know, you go to China, and because most politicians in China are engineers, you can take a train from Beijing to Shanghai in 4.5 hours, which is like 1,350 kilometers. So it's like Melbourne, Sydney in less than 3 hours. But we don't have a train like that in Australia. You come to Australia, because most politicians are lawyers, we need to fill forms and we need to follow regulations. So this is a sign in Sydney. It's a real sign. I mean, it's a combination of signs, as you can see. So we can call it Strine sign, like Australian sign, Strine, S-T-R-I-N-E, Strine sign. And it's a conglomeration of signs. It's kind of a mega sign, which consists of many little signs. And these signs tell you whether you can park on the left and whether you can park on the right. But because Australia is a bureaucracy, there is a regulation, but then there is a sub-regulation or a regulation for different times or for different days. And then there is an additional sign, like it says special event, clearway. So on Sunday, 26th of January 2014, then you cannot, you need to ignore the signs on the left. You need to only go to the yellow, but you need kind of a paradox. I mean, a pair of doctorates, maybe one in mathematics and one in linguistics or semiotics, if you want, to decipher this sign. It's a little bit like I spent some time at MIT and at Harvard, and there was a supermarket. I think it was Kendall Square. It was like 20 years ago. Oh, 30 years ago. What am I saying? Oh, I can't believe time flies. And
it does.
I went to the supermarket, and there was a cashier there. And I was talking to the cashier, and she told me a very funny thing. She said that once a person came to this supermarket with 50 different items, but it was an express cashier. I think it was like 12 items or fewer, or they say 12 items or less. They're American.
Yeah, right.
And she asked the guy, "Excuse me, are you from Harvard, so you do not know how to count, or are you from MIT, so you do not know how to read?" And if you see here, the sign requires you both to be good at mathematics, or at least kind of quantitative science as in scientia, and also in in words. What does it actually mean? School drop-off pickup zone, you have on the right there. So I chose this sign to introduce you to Australia, in this particular instance, to a fascinating and multifaceted, and I have to say, probably the most beautiful modern city in the world, namely Sydney. And that's it.
Right.
It's bureaucracy.
It's yes, that's a wonderful representation of all the conflicting
Exactly, the conflicting
bureaucracies. Yes,
and yeah, we call them in phonology. We talk about the bleeding rules. Like optimality theory. There is a bleeding rule, etc. So it kind of cancels the other rule, etc., etc. So there is a hierarchy of rules, And one of the lies that I heard when I arrived in Australia in 2001 for the first time, I was having my sabbatical from Cambridge in England. And then I was in Singapore at the National University of Singapore. And then I was invited to keynote at the University of Sydney. And I met a linguist, and this guy told me a lie. He said, well, now I know it's a lie, but at the time I didn't know it was a lie. He said, I just want you to know, Aussies despise hierarchy and Aussies despise authority. And having lived in Australia now for 21 years, because I moved to Australia in 2004 from Churchill College, Cambridge, by now I have discovered that this guy was living in La La Land. In other words, he was living the dream or the illusion. There are some countries in which they tell you, oh, we are all individuals and we are all, but actually, I'm not talking about Australia now, but actually after a while you realize that it's kind of individualism that is very conformist. Everybody has the same type of car, the same, 3 kids. And anyway, but coming back to Australia, hierarchy is unfortunately extremely important at Australian universities, for example. So again, this is the introduction.
Yeah, this is a great introduction. We'll move on to I can see there are 5 signs
5 signs.
you've chosen. Yeah. Let me get into that.
I didn't know how long you wanted me to discuss. So I only chose 5 signs, but I could choose like many more.
I'm sure you could. So the second one,
yes.
Can you see this?
Yes. Can you interpret it? Can you understand what's happening here?
I cannot. I've tried to. So here we have a very large sort of low rectangle billboard that says, don't drive like and then I see what it is now.
What is it? What is it?
A dumbbell?
No, but not. It's a very good guess. Does dumbbell mean kind of an idiot for you, or?
Well, dumb would be.
Exactly. But, so it could actually, you are very, very hot, but no cigar. Yeah, we say you're very close.
But no cigar. Is that the idiomatic expression in Australia?
So in American, you say no cigar. Right. Yeah, but hot you say in Israeli, which is the revival of Hebrew. So cham, hot, hot, hot. But then I added the American, but no cigar, like no cigar. So you don't get the cigar, which is what they gave in the TV interview, you would get a cigar if you win. But tembel, it's interesting to say dumbbell because in Israeli, which is my mother tongue, it's the result of the Hebrew revival. There is a word tembel. Tembel means idiot, fool, and it sounds a little bit like dumbbell. Right. Yeah, it's just serendipity. But dumb, you're right. But this is unfortunately a sign that South Australian government or whatever, Country Roads, Department of Transport, the name of departments in Australia always change. For example, I once invited the Multicultural Affairs Minister when I was professor at the University of Queensland to our, it was a Semitic Afro-Asiatic conference with Arabs and Jews, and it was very, very good linguistically. And when I asked the minister to come, she said, "Oh, just send me an email." She was a minister of multicultural affairs, and I said, "What's your emails? What's your email?" And she said, "Oh, it's minister@disabilities.qld.gov.au, something like that." And I said, "Excuse me, are you sure? Am I talking to the multicultural minister?" She said, yes. So why is it disabilities? To be multicultural is not a disability. It's not a liability. If you have a foreign accent, it means that you actually at least know perfectly one other language. if not 12. Yeah, I mean, it's not a disability. But then she told me, no, I'm the Minister of Disabilities and Multicultural Affairs. So you change the names all the time. There was Ministry in Australia of Border Security. So it was multiculturalism, then border security, then this. So they changed. Now, the ministry or the department that made this sign did not think that there are many Chinese drivers, for example, many tourists, many locals who are not native speakers of English. But
Right.
this is don't drive like a knob, K-N-O-B, knob. And knob is both the thing that opens the door, the handle, but also it kind of means like idiot or asshole or stupid. What does it mean for you, Sophia? Are you from the Cotswolds? Where are you from?
No, I'm from the UK. I'm from Britain, but I'd
No, but
forgotten
where?
actually knob.
But where?
I'm
Which one?
from Staffordshire. I'm
Oh,
from
Staffordshire.
Staffordshire.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Staffordshire.
yeah.
Beautiful.
I'm from where Wedgwood and Royal Dalton pottery comes from.
Oh, that's
So,
what. Well, also many dogs come
yeah.
from there.
Yes, many
Yeah.
dangerous dogs.
I like Staffordshire Bull Terrier. Yeah.
Yes, they're not very aesthetically pleasing, but never mind. Sorry.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but in
Yes,
Staffordshire,
in the
you would use
UK.
it. Yeah. Mhm.
No, if I would have used it, I wonder if it's a bit dated now. I don't know if I've heard
I think that you're
younger
right.
people using knob, but definitely in the 80s and 90s, it was,
Right.
yes.
I think that you're right, but Australia tends to keep things from the past, and it's a little bit, sometimes in Australia, don't forget that the colonizers in Australia were Anglo-Celtic, so you never know when exactly, whether it came with them then or they got it later. But of course, England might change in some aspects when in Australia, linguistically, the words still remain.
Yeah, and also, I mean, I'm saying 80s and 90s, but that's because that's my memory of British English.
Right,
I've been
right.
living in France for over 30 years, so
Right.
perhaps people still do say knob.
Right,
and
right,
they likely do. I just haven't heard it myself, but that doesn't really mean much. So don't drive like a knob. And
Don't drive like
underneath it says, country roads need safer drivers.
Exactly, yeah. So I put it here because of the pun. It's a little bit like ribes, ribes. Do you say it
Yep.
in French like rebus,
Ribes.
or how do you say
Rebus, yeah.
rebus?
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's beautiful. I love puns. I love punishing people. So sometimes they are advanced. Sometimes they're considered kind of cheesy, a little bit a la James Bond. I know that in Britain, people often see puns as kind of a low level of sense of humor, as opposed to, say, sarcasm. But there is something about puns that remind me of the double language in Oxbridge, in the sense that sometimes you listen to an Oxbridge professor saying something to the supervisee, and they say one thing which semantically means X, but pragmatically means minus X or Y. So, for example, I used to volunteer in Cambridge after I finished my DPhil in Oxford, and my students were Chinese PhD students at Cambridge, and I taught them how to understand academic English. And often they would come to me and say, "Oh, look, my supervisor, he told me that I was very courageous and I was very happy, but then I feel that he doesn't really like me. I don't understand why." And I said, "Tell me exactly what he said." And then the Chinese would say, "Well, he told me this is a bold proposal, like the proposal of the PhD." And I said, "Oh, Lee, of course, what he meant was that what you've written is kind of palpable poppycock. I mean, bold proposal means that it's bad, But of course, the Chinese understood it because he didn't learn pragmatics, only semantics, like the literal meaning. He understood it literally. And of course, in Oxbridge, sometimes it's very bad. I mean, if somebody comes and sees you and says, "Oh, how wonderful seeing you, Sophia. I thought you were supposed to be in France." This means kind of F off, like you're disturbing me. So you need to know the intonation, etc. But the fact that they expected you to be in France implies in this specific case that they want you to be in France rather than disturbing them in their own kind of place. So when it comes to double language, also a pun has two levels. One is the literal level, knob, like the handle, and the other one is the metaphorical or the slang meaning, which is a completely different meaning. Now, in this specific case, there is a third element which you need to actually realize what it is. I mean, it looks a little bit like a dumbbell. What is it exactly? Oh, suddenly you see that there's two screws there, so it is probably a knob, K-N-O-B. But needless to say, for Chinese students of mine, it's extremely hard to understand what's written there.
Absolutely, yes. So that's social semiotics gone wrong, really, isn't it? It's not the symbolism of the object, the way it's drawn, the way it's painted, unless
it is
and then
deliberate.
You have to know what a knob is.
Yeah, unless it is deliberate,
yes.
like unless it is kind of othering, we know this sign, you do not know, so you don't feel at home. This is not your home. So it's...
Oh, yes. That's
in other words, it's I am charitable. So I think in this specific case, probably they just said, look, this is for fun. We want to attract knobs, idiots, fools, to drive safely. Let's make it kind of in a nice way. There were many researchers, and I'm interested in such things, that show that when you show somebody a horrible accident, like blood and gory photos, etc., sometimes it actually makes people agitated and it can be counterproductive. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, true. But here, you did put your finger on it. There's a level of presumption of knowledge of the English language.
Yes.
That, probably might cause more accidents than safeguard them because people are trying to figure out what it means.
Well, what you've just said, we can move to the next slide, and I can, or the next sign, and I can tell you something which really corroborates what you've just said.
Right.
And if you look at it, I'll tell you. Because when I saw the next sign, as a linguist, I wanted to take a photo, and I had to make a very dangerous U-turn because I wanted to take a photo to show it to one day to somebody who might contact me to interview me about science. And serendipitously,
well, you did well, didn't you?
Exactly. It has just happened for the first time in my life. So I love science.
So I'm very glad that I'm very glad you risked your life and perhaps the lives of other people on the road there to take this photograph.
And when I took this photo, I showed it to my students at the University of Adelaide. That was like 15 years ago or so. And I asked them, what do you think it is? And again, a Chinese student, there are many Chinese students, she asked, this is don't drive like a chicken. And I said, why like a chicken? I said, because chickens, they go from one lane to another. They drive, they kind of run in sporadic, erratic ways. And she says, yeah, so when I see that, don't drive like a chicken, I hold my wheel very sturdily and steadily, and I do not change lanes. So actually...
yes, it functions.
Yeah, it
It's a
functions.
functional, erroneous phoebus.
Exactly. It's what I call a howler, Howler. Howler is kind of the laughing monkey, but in logic, a howler is when you do, say, 16 over 64, you get rid of the 6, and then it's 1 over 4. Now, 1 over 4, it's true, 16 over 64 is a quarter, but to get rid of the 6s is against mathematics, so it's kind of a howler in the sense that the way to get to the right result is erroneous, but the right result is there. So we are lucky, it's kind of good. It's serendipity. It's good luck. So this one, of course, is don't drive like a. How do you understand that?
I can't.
Okay, don't
Like a
drive like.
cock.
Exactly. Don't drive like a
Yes.
cock. Yeah. So a cock again is, there is a joke here because a cock is like a rooster, but also a cock is kind of a dickhead or whatever. I guess it is via.
It's a phallus. It's like the knob, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's
Exactly.
literally the penis. So it's
Yes.
don't drive like a penis.
But it's funny that the penis becomes the epitome of stupidity.
It's strange.
Yeah, I mean, why is it? Is it because when all the blood goes there, then people kind of can't think? Or I mean, I don't understand the logic. By the way, not in every language, but in many languages. In some languages, schmuck, for example, in Yiddish is like an asshole, But Schwanz, which means literally tail, but also it means the penis. Schwanz is kind of a little bit like stupid. So yeah, there is but cazzo in Italian, for example, would be oh shit, cazzo, like holy shit, it's not stronzo, which is like oscemo, which is stupid, or stronzo is an asshole, So it's interesting to look at various languages a little bit like like somebody just now somebody emailed me and asked me what is the word in Israeli for Turkey, and I said hodu, which means of course India. Yeah, I mean I'm talking about the turkey like the rooster, and of course in Hindi it's Peru. Like so every country kind of gives it to another country. I'm sure you know it from France with cheeses, and is it Belgian cheese or French cheese or Greek cheese or, etc. So this is don't drive like a cock. Again, it causes accidents if there are semioticists on the wheel because they want to take a photo. So the U-turn might be dangerous.
Yes. Excellent. But again, it must be so hard to integrate if you don't know the language at this sort of level of metaphorical use. Yeah.
Yeah, there
So I
is,
do
as you
feel
said,
sorry for your Chinese students.
there is some type of a snobbery, like look, by the way, I did not research who put it exactly. Was there kind of a specific company that was hired in order to make these signs, a little bit like Interbrand Wood with Pfizer? Pfizer hired for Viagra, like Viagra. This is Interbrand Wood, I think. It's a company that they hired, and they came up with Viagra, which is like vigor and Niagara. But Viagra in Sanskrit means tiger. So I am sure that the person who came up with this word might have known about it, but how many people these days know about it? So there is a gap between the
Exactly.
creator's ideas and the actual ideas.
Yeah, this is like a sociolect it's something that represents something to a much smaller community. So I'm not sure that it was produced out of ill will or the desire to see foreigners have hideous car crashes.
I agree with
But
you.
I think it's probably just a lack of thought, a lack of realization that there are people who speak different languages, and maybe, even though they speak English really very well, they don't speak it in a dialectical way as
Absolutely. And the fact
that.
and the matter the fact is that even some British and some Americans would not necessarily get every sign in Australia, because Australian English is different from British English, let alone American English. A word that you see here a lot is stoush. Do you know what stoush means? Stoush.
No.
So there is a stoush between the prime minister and the opposition leader. Stoush, it's like a feud, like a battle, like a small argument, stoush.
Right.
And on the other hand, I once told an English speaker from America that I'm going to shout her son Emil. He said, "Oh, no, don't shout. He's very shy. Don't shout at me." I said, No. I'm going to shout him Emil, meaning I'm going to invite him. I'm going to treat him for a meal. So every Australian would know the word shout as treating you for a meal or for coffee. Can I shout you a coffee today? And every educated Australian would know stoush. And then I think almost every Australian would know, like, this computer is cactus. Do you know what it means, cactus?
No.
Cactus means like kaput, like verkackt in Yiddish. So like finished. It's gone. It's complete. It's finished, So yeah, don't drive like a cock.
Okay. Let's move on to the next sign. So
Can you rebus solve it?
oh,
Because
dear.
when I saw it, I noticed the anchor, and then I, coming originally from Israel, thought of Vysotsky tea, because there is a tea called Vysotsky with this W, and the tea bag looks exactly like that with W. So I said, don't drive like a tea, Vysotsky tea anchor. I said, no. But then when I made the dangerous U-turn again, because this road was full of cars, somebody shouted with a very Australian accent, "Good day, mate. Don't drive like a wanker," so I understood it was a wanker. And a wanker, again, to be the Aussies who decided to have this sign, they thought, look, most drivers would understand it. They are local. They know what a wanker is. It might be a little bit hard at the beginning, but then, oh, yeah, they will think about it, so it will make them kind of maybe not sleep or something like that, because they'll say, what is that sign? What does it actually mean? Oh, have you seen that sign? I don't know. I mean, maybe it kind of keeps you awake if you think about it, but this is being charitable, because I would like to think that people like you, like me, would want to apply their Apollonian tendency, which means they would like to strive for meaningfulness. So, for example, when an Arab hears the word influenza, they say, what is influenza? Oh, influenza, the nose of the goat. The nose of the goat is wet as if it suffers from influenza. So this kind of Apollonian tendency results in etymology or folk etymology, So being charitable, I believe people might think about the meaningfulness. But you know what? I'm sure there are Australians who would see this sign and say, oh, okay, yeah, probably it means something to be safer, to be slower, so I'll just slow down. But they would not care too much about the specific meaning, which is something which is very important for me. I remember when I arrived in Sydney in 2001, I asked somebody, excuse me, how do I get to Bondi Junction? And they were local and they did not know. And they just smiled and told me, I don't know. And I said, so why are you so happy? I mean, if I did not know something, I would have been ashamed, but they were very, I don't know. Like, I couldn't give a damn about it. I don't care, practically. And I was very, very flabbergasted on the one hand, but also shocked. I was jealous that somebody who does not know such a basic thing does not feel ashamed, and kind of practically it's almost like Zorba the Greek, like I don't care. So I'm sure there are people who do not care about the semiotics of this sign.
Yeah, no, I'm certain as well. And also, I wonder if I can imagine from a sort of communication, from a cognitive level, perhaps the very fact of having to piece together the words in your mind makes it stickier, makes you
Yes.
think about it a bit more.
Yes.
But I'm not sure if that applies to everyone, because I think, first of all, I think the people going really fast won't have time to decipher that. So
Well,
perhaps just a simple sign saying "Don't drive like a wanker" in all letters. That
yeah,
could
but
provide some Australian realism.
yes, but you see, if you put it like "Don't drive like a wanker," Wanker, they will say, "Oh, this is kind of crude. It's a little bit gross." Whereas if you put it as a rebus, it kind of makes the bitter pill more swallowable. So, in other words, if you write to an Aussie, "Don't drive like a wanker," well, don't drive like that, you wanker. You know, he would feel attacked. Whereas if you put it as a rebus, as kind of a riddle, then it will make them think, and when they decipher it, they will laugh rather than they will say, "Oh, who the fuck are you to tell me don't drive like a wanker?" You know what I mean? So I understand and again, I'm charitable. I understand the qualification. It's kind of, it makes it easier to absorb such a criticism.
Yeah, sure.
People don't like when somebody tells them a critical
Directly.
thing. Yeah, people don't
Yeah,
like it. Yeah.
for sure. Let's. I'm a bit afraid to click on the next photo. Oh no, that's all right. It's you.
Yeah, look, this is the best sign I have discovered in Australia, and I will explain to you why. Firstly, you understand what this sign means from the perspective of the people who put it, right?
No, I think you'll
Okay.
have to explain that. I understand it from your academic and scholarly
Oh,
perspective.
no, no, no.
So
So
I
this,
thought it was a fake sign.
no, I am not a Photoshop or AI or AGI or ASI user. I know that
Right.
AGI and ASI will change our life completely to the extent that there will be no professorships like the ones that I have been having. And this is part of life. Shift happens, and that's okay. I mean, without shift happening, we would have never been linguists because linguists love shift happening. This sign is a sign in Victoria, not in South Australia, as the three last signs. I showed you a sign from New South Wales, that's Sydney. Then I showed you three signs from South Australia, which is where I live. Adelaide is the capital. This sign is in Victoria, the capital of which is Melbourne. The sign is on the highway and it says, "Stop your car, revive," meaning eat some dumplings, maybe have a cup of coffee or a cuppa, as in a cup of tea. And only then, because you stopped and revived yourselves, meaning you ate something, you went to the loo, then you will survive the drive. Because if you drive from Adelaide to Melbourne non-stop, which is like 8 hours or so, if you drive from Adelaide to Sydney non-stop via Victoria, then you can God forbid, like maybe fall asleep or whatever. So the sign is very functional. Stop the car, revive yourself by eating and drinking something, not alcohol, of course, and then you will survive. But for me, when I saw this sign, it was like gold because I have been involved in the revival of languages. And for me, this sign means stop your life. Your language is becoming a sleeping beauty or a dreaming beauty. For example, you are Adnyamatna, the rock people, Aboriginal rock people. Stop your life. You're the last speaker. Revive your tongue. Teach your kids to learn this, to speak the language whilst you're a native speaker. Because when you die, there'll be no native speakers. It's still possible to reclaim a sleeping beauty, meaning a no longer spoken language. but it's much harder in the sense that you have no native speakers to listen to. You have no master-apprentice technique because there are no masters. Masters are native speakers in this case. And the apprentices are their grandchildren who help them with their daily things. And then in lieu of that, the eldest speaks the language to them. So stop your life, revive your language, and only this way your culture, your intellectual sovereignty, your autonomy, your spirituality, your well-being, your distinctiveness, the fact that you're not the same as everybody else, will survive. Without your language, you will lose so much because languages are a repository of knowledges, of systems, of customs, of dance, of theater, of music. Language is not just language. It's not only signs and phonemes and morphemes. Language are the soul, metaphorically speaking. SOUL, So stop, revive, survive for me is a sign about revivalistics. Revivalistics is the transdisciplinary field of how to revive your language from any angle possible. It can be legal, it can be psychological, it can be anthropological, it can also be linguistic, but revivalistics is far beyond linguistics. It's completely transdisciplinary. Now, the difference between interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary is very important because in the interdisciplinary case, let's say you have a question from chemistry and you use physics to answer it. But in transdisciplinary, you have a question that arises itself from the interface, from the overlapping between different disciplines. So the question you would have never thought about had you not been transdisciplinary. So recently there was Watson who died, Watson and Crick. They both discovered the double helix at Cambridge. And Crick was at Churchill College, Cambridge. And recently, I think Watson died recently at the age of 97. And if you look at Watson, he was a transdisciplinary person. He knew a little bit about ornithology, like birds, a little bit about biology, a little bit about mathematics. But actually, you need transdisciplinarity. And when I come back to revivalistics, it's completely transdisciplinary. And therefore, I employ, for example, circus people who teach the language to kids using circus. What does a circus person have to do with linguistics? Well, through revivalistics.
So through embodiment and situated language,
Exactly.
The eco-linguistics of it. Yeah, no, it's a fascinating field, really.
Exactly.
I'll have to have you back on later on for some more signs.
Oh, it's such a pleasure.
This has been a really interesting look at your signs that have come from Australia and very different signs.
I can assure you that nobody else would have shown you these 5 signs together. I don't think there will be a combination of these 5 signs. You need to be kind of coming from a revival language, from a linguistic perspective, from getting tickets, parking in the wrong place, etc., in order to come up with these.
There's academic and personal knowledge to the fore. Just to go back to this, because I was just a bit lost in my thoughts here, looking at the Stop, Revive, Survive sign. And I remember I listened to your keynote at ILA conference in 2021 in Rutgers. Was it 2021?
Wow!
2022?
You were there, is it? You were there?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I remember you talked about heart languages and head languages. And, I think the immediacy of these words, just the single words on the plain background.
Yes.
It's something that touches something quite visceral. I think it's a very successful sign post for that reason.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You're talking about this sign, Stop, Revive, Survive.
Yeah. It just reminded me of what you said about the Aboriginal languages and the people who were trying to revive them. And that in itself was just fascinating because of the the role that you played in and your
Yes.
teams, of course,
Look,
in going
yeah.
into the midsection and trying to reconstruct words that no longer were in circulation.
Yes. So what happened with the Bangala, for example, it's a fascinating story. So in my research as a historical linguist, I discovered that the seat of emotions of the Bangala Aboriginal people was the stomach or the belly, namely Warna. So Warna, Warna. And the RN means kind of retroflex, like in Indian languages, so Warna, and Bangala. And Warna was the seat of emotions in the traditional Bangala. However, when I taught them the seat of emotions, then some of the Aboriginal people who learned the language from me, because nobody else, unfortunately, spoke the language, because the language was killed 60 years earlier, they said, no, we know that the seat of emotions is the heart. And the heart in Bangala is Yulgu. Now, it is fascinating because if you're a documentary linguist, you tell them, look, I know the language better than you do because I have a documentation from that, and this is a language, so you need to follow the language. But if you're a revivalist, you actually put at the center not the language, but rather the language owners, the custodians. And if they feel, for various reasons, in this case, for example, that they might feel so because of heart being the seat of emotions within the colonizer's language, namely English. Because in English, you say, I'm heartbroken. You don't say, I'm belly broken. It doesn't matter. They are the ones who are at the wheel, coming back to road signs. And they are the ones who have the authority, coming back to what we talked about, authority and hierarchy, etc. And they're the ones who are more important than me, the facilitator. I'm the revivalist, but they're the custodians. And therefore, if they want Yulgu rather than Warna, if they want the heart rather than the belly to be the seat of emotions, so be it. In revivalistics, the speaker is at the center, not the language.
That's such a good point. Yeah, especially in, I think, various disciplines visiting post-colonial practices, and this desire to constantly differentiate in order to remove oneself from the original colonial intention. You could see how that could be, the Warna could be reinforced upon the person despite them wanting the heart. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they are the ones who decide. Not me.
It's beautifully said. Beautifully said. And since it was so beautifully said, we'll end it here. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show, Signs, to talk about your signs. And yes, I hope to see you in May.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sophia. It is such a pleasure to talk to you.
Bye-bye, Ghil'ad.